Welcome to Saturday's Warrior. As always, I'm Trevor, and with me I've got Adam as we do our weekly picks. Welcome, Adam. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks. Excited for this week. We get the bye week for BYU, but a lot of exciting games to pick.
Still a lot of good matchups. Should be a good weekend of college football. Before we get into it, if you are a fan of BYU, Big 12, college football at all, please like and subscribe. And now, before we get into making our picks, let's take a look at how we did this last week. So this is where we left off. Um, at the end of last week, you still have a healthy lead. I finally chipped away just a little bit, and I'm planning on making a comeback here.
I
Let's
think you
see.
will. It was a rough week.
It was a rough week. So let's see how we came out here. So looking at the Big 12 games, the matchups, we were, I think, yeah, we were both in lockstep on all of these. So it was rough, but it was rough for both of us. So um, obviously, some surprises. What did you make of the games this weekend?
Yeah, well, Texas Tech made a statement. I'll tell you, I put my faith in the Houston Cougars, and that didn't go too well. But that offensive explosion for Texas Tech was impressive. It was needed. Super happy for Texas Tech, happy for their fan base. They needed that game desperately. The other fan base that I love that needed this desperately was Baylor coming back from 28 points down. I'll tell you, all my talk about Timmy McClain for UCF really didn't go anywhere. They're dying to have Plumlee back. But Baylor, is that a win that can resurrect the season? That was exciting. And then West Virginia with the statement at TCU. Man, that one, of all the games, the West Virginia game drew my eye the most. Not only because we've got them on the schedule and we need that win, but man, what a turnaround. Pick to finish dead last in the Big 12, and they come out and they're making statements left and right. And with the win at TCU, that was big.
Yeah, I agree. I thought the the three surprises there, that, or at least according to our picks, that one was the one that surprised me the least. I just feel like West Virginia is kind of cracked the code. They're just playing with real grit and determination and finding ways to win. So you got to respect that. The Houston Texas Tech game, it was a rivalry game. Those games could go either way. And so maybe I should have gone with the home team on that one. But I felt like Houston kind of had some momentum, whereas Texas Tech was sliding. And this was a game they had to have before they started, seeing things slip away and go into some dark places.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they pulled it out. So give them credit. And the same you could say for Baylor. I mean, I watched a little clip of the halftime speech of Grimes to his team, pumping them up, and I don't know if that's what did it or what they did, but they just, to give them credit, they did not give up. And yes, there were some things that went their way, but that's what it's about, and causing those opportunities, taking advantage of those opportunities, and they did. So that one shocked me, but
Yeah.
good for them. Not so good for the new Big 12 members.
Yeah, yeah, rough entry into the Big 12. I've seen a lot of favorable analysis for BYU where people are reflecting back and saying, those years of independence were actually pretty good for BYU. They come in a little bit more prepared than the other three did by playing in the American over the past 10 years. BYU comes in with a roster that's a little bit more prepared and having gone through some Power Five games in the past. So. Yeah, I think BYU comes away looking a little bit stronger out of this, but yeah, tough entry, and it's not a good scenario for the Big 12 overall. I'm super happy for Texas. I don't mind them being great. Oklahoma's strong this year, but it's not a good look for the Big 12 when those two come out and they just dominate and then walk over to the SEC, and the feeling is, well, we just lost, the marquee teams in the conference and we're just left with the other teams. And I don't think that's the case at all, but that's going to be the narrative because at this point, it looks like it's going to be Texas and Oklahoma in the Big 12 game. We'll see what happens with the Red River Rivalry this weekend, but man, that's a tough storyline for the Big 12. I wish that wasn't the case, but it's hard to imagine anybody stopping Texas or Oklahoma at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all thought the new teams would struggle a little bit. We thought UCF would come out a little bit stronger, and I think they will. I think they'll end better. Things will right. That ship will ride a little bit, but Yeah, I think people were expecting, me included, to see the Big 12 we saw the last couple of years, where two different teams in the conference championship game every year, and really, competitive from top to bottom. And we've got a lot of teams that are not looking so hot right now, outside of the two that are leaving for the SEC. So
Yeah.
yeah, that is tough, but I think things will correct. I think, it'll be a new chapter starting next year and we can move on. So,
Yeah.
speaking of moving on, let's take a look at the top 25 type matchups that we had for this week and
Well, I
how
think we want to finish the second half of our picks, right?
oh, that's what I mean. Right here, if I can get
Oh, the
this
top
slide.
25 matchups.
Yeah, sorry.
There we go.
So,
Hey, we did better than I thought on there. That's not too bad.
yeah. So actually, we did better here than we did in conference. And, so I think Oregon State felt like, Utah was going to come down to earth once they faced a competent team. Colorado had a better showing. They came back and really
They did. They made that respectable.
they did, and I'm not surprised. USC I think is not as good. I mean, obviously no defense. Georgia beating Auburn, that was a close one, and they pulled out some last minute heroics.
Georgia looks vulnerable. We'll see.
Absolutely. They are not the Georgia of the last couple years. That's not to say they're not good, but they're not at that same level. And LSU, Ole Miss. So, you got that one wrong. What do you have to say for yourself?
I'm ashamed. Picking LSU in that circumstance. Lane Kiffin really came out. I was shocked on that one. I did not think that was going to happen, but props to Lane Kiffin. Came in and pulled out a big one.
LSU's, was all the talk, were they going to win the West division this year? And it looks like that's slipping away from them. So
the West looks so vulnerable. You just don't know week to week who's going to pull it out, who's not. I don't know if I like Bama going to Texas A&M this week. I just, who knows, week to week. It's a fun division to watch because we're used to just dominance from there, and everybody looks vulnerable.
Well, what a bummer on such a down year for Bama. And by down year, they're still, a top 15 team,
Yeah.
but everything's relative. But on a down year for Bama, that nobody's seeming to be able to take advantage of
to
that.
seize that moment. I know.
So that's a bummer for those schools, because this really seemed like a missed opportunity. I think at the end of the season, if Bama still comes out of the West. Notre Dame, Duke made it interesting, and then between putting kids down and other things, it was close. I was coming back to the game, and by the time I got back to it, it was over, and I thought, oh shoot, I let them down. I stopped watching, and that's when it's away. But so anyway, and then Bama over Mississippi State. So that leaves us. Let's get to the final slide. So it was a wash this week. So I was hoping, if Duke had pulled that off, I could have been +2 on you. But
yeah.
I'll keep chipping away. That's what this week is for. So
yep.
we'll see. I don't feel great going into these picks this week. I just feel like there's a lot that could go either way. But so, and actually, before we get into the picks, we alluded to a little bit the BYU game with Cincinnati. And BYU's got out of the new members, the lone win over a Big 12 school. Of course, this was against another new member, so it's not quite the same. One of them had to win that. And but we do. I mean, we still have a quality SEC win, but nonetheless, I was just looking through this, and you look at how we started the game, punt, but at least it was a respectable drive. There were some running plays, and we actually had the ball for a few minutes, but then this was Cincy's. Fortunately, we got the interception. That was great and really set the tone for the game. But look at that. And then we got a turnover on downs, but then we weren't able to capitalize on. We had a short 3 and out. And then they had a very long drive, touchdown, another 3 and out for us, short, and they get the ball back. They end up punting, but they still had the ball for a good chunk of time. We have another very short 3 and out. and then we give it back to them. Fortunately, we held them to just a field goal, but I mean, you could see. I felt like at that point, I was like, our defense is just gassed, and this happened a bit with Kansas at the end of the second half and through a bit of the third quarter as well. And that's not something that's going to be sustainable as we get deeper into conference play. And then fortunately we had this crazy drive, 30 seconds, and we go to the field and get a touchdown, which was great. We hold them to a short 3 and out. We do a sustained drive and get a touchdown. And, it's just a completely different story in the second half. But even so, again, just held to a field goal, but they're holding on to the ball so much time. And part of it is, they were rushing more and it was really our passing attack. So everyone says, when we're talking about not having the ball for a lot of time, it's because we're getting big chunk plays through the air. And so that is part of it. But I just wonder, is our defense going to be able to hold up? Are we going to, especially if we sustain any more injuries? Fortunately, we had the bye week when we did, because it allows people to get healthy. And it seems like there's a good chance most of the guys that we lost from the Kansas game and didn't have during Cincy should be back after the bye week against TCU. Anyway, so then that's the rest. The fourth quarter wasn't much. We were able to hold the ball. We had a long drive, and that was probably more important than scoring, was running the clock off. And then we had another turnover on downs. But look, I mean, we get this again. I know we were trying to run off clock, but we only got 106 off the clock there and gave them a chance to score another touchdown. And, sometimes I know it was almost inconsequential, but, we let them stay in it. And sometimes I'd like Satake just to show a little aggression at the end. Don't always be a gentleman and just really, put the game out, because yes, running plays, you can run off more clock, but if you get a first down, that allows you to run even more clock off if and move forward, or, even putting yourself in position for a field goal. So anyway, I've kind of gone off on a tangent, but I was just looking at this, and it's two different stories, but it really, shows, I think, a lot of where we struggled and how we had success. So now that I've gone on this diatribe, what did you make of the game this weekend?
Well, I think you look at the slow start, and it felt like the offense was single-minded when they came out and said, we were embarrassed at Kansas by our run game, and we are going to run the ball no matter what. We're going to prove that we can run the ball. And that's what those first few drives felt like, and they did. They ran the ball. They didn't pass the ball. They didn't get into a rhythm. It was nothing but, we're going to prove we can run the ball. And they did that. They ran the ball a few times. And then it felt like getting into halftime, everybody woke up to say, oh, okay, let's get out there and let's get after it. And so it's shocking how explosive our offense can be after times of dormancy. And you saw this against Kansas. It felt like the game was slipping away, and we had zero rush game, and they could pass the ball and pass the ball. And so I still don't know what to make of our offense. I don't think anybody knows what to make of our offense yet. We ran the ball enough against Cincinnati, against a really, really good defensive line, to say that, yeah, to me, that's kind of our run game. 70 to 100 yards a game. It's not stellar. It's not great. We're not going to be 127th in total rushing yards by the end of the year. We'll get up there, but we're not going to be top 60 either. I mean, it's going to be a very slow run game, but I think it's built into the offense like that. We're a pass first offense with Slovis and the receivers we have, and that's working. So I wasn't super concerned. I'm still not super concerned about the offense, because there's an ebb and a flow to it, and you feel like that's going to come along as the season goes. We'll still have inexplicable gaps where we're just not moving the ball. We'll have games that we lose because of that. But the offense has shown against good defenses that they're explosive. And I trust A-Rod enough and a veteran quarterback enough that they'll get that figured out, and we'll still score a lot of points throughout the year. I did hear some comments from Satake at the end of the game about about how he really wanted to take it to him. And I felt like it was positive to hear him talk through that because I think that's been a knock on Satake over the years is he's not closing out games. He's got him against the ropes and he doesn't take it to him. And he really talked about that directly, saying how it sort of recognizing that it's got to be better. And I haven't heard him speak to that before. So that was good to hear that recognition. And when we get into conference play, you can't let someone hang around like that. It'll come back and bite us eventually. And so you really do. You got to be aggressive. I felt like they were a high snap away from finishing this game the way they should, and they just got to be out of sorts after the snap over the head that was super uncharacteristic of the team. So we'll see. I'll be really fascinated. I think the first half against TCU coming out of the bye week is going to tell us everything we need to know about the rest of the season for this team. Did they come out and did they address some of these issues on the bye week, or are they coming out soft and discombobulated because they've had too much time off? I think that's going to tell us a ton. If they can come out crisp and sharp, I think you got a really positive second half of the year for this offense. But if they've gone through 2 weeks on the bye week and haven't addressed these issues, then I think we've seen what we're going to see from the BYU offense. It'll be pretty consistent through the rest of the year.
So speaking of the rest of the season, so we have, I mean, first of all, we got to be happy. We are, if you told me before the season we're coming out of the first 5 games 4-1, I would be happy.
I'd be
felt like
thrilled.
There was a chance, but I really felt like, 3-2 was my most likely scenario. There was a chance we went 0-2. I didn't really think we'd lose the Cincy game, but coming out of that 4-1, that is amazing. And what's even better is that coming forward, we have some games that look a lot more winnable than they did before the season. You look at Texas Tech, they could be getting some momentum, but at the moment they look vulnerable.
Well, we've got them at home, and I think that's a big difference maker for Texas Tech. They've struggled on the road, and we've got them at home, and that's going to be big.
Iowa State, I mean, people are still trying to figure out what to make of them, but they're definitely vulnerable this year. But we knew that coming in. And then Oklahoma State is a lot worse than what was projected. So, that gives us, some that are, TCU, but I think they're back to what people were expecting. So what is your projection over these next 7 games here?
Yeah, I like us to finish 7-5 with a chance at 8-4 in 2 games, and because I think we'll lose at TCU. I think we'll lose a close one. I think it'll go similar to the Kansas game. We'll be in it, but I don't know that we have enough to win that game. I do like us against Texas Tech at home, against Iowa State at home. I like us at Oklahoma State. I could see us dropping one of those inexplicably. It feels like every year we lose that game where we're like, wait, what just happened? Why did we lose this game? And so I could see that happen in one of those games. But I also like us picking up possibly one more. The West Virginia game, that's at West Virginia. That's going to be a tough one to win. I liked us prior to the season winning that game a lot. And I think West Virginia's shown they're a force to be reckoned with. So I don't know that I like us winning that game anymore. I have us at a clear loss at Texas. I don't think we can compete in that game. Oklahoma, if they had plateaued and weren't getting so much better week to week, I'd feel better about that. We got them at home. That's a game they might overlook. We could, I could see us just pulling a random upset in that game unexpectedly. But the stronger they look as they go by week to week, the less likely that looks. And so I think I have us comfortably at 7-5. I love us going bowling, hitting middle of the pack of the Big 12 in the first year, and building on that for future recruits and future teams.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I agree on all that. I actually, in order to, and when I was making my picks prior to the season, I said, and I think we can steal one from one of the Oklahoma schools. And I picked Oklahoma at home instead of going to Oklahoma.
I had the same thought.
And so now I've
Preseason.
definitely switched on that. Okay. So I completely agree, by the way, 7-5, I think. And that is huge. We were not projected by the analysts, by ESPN, by Vegas to make a bowl game, and to come out 7-5 with a chance at, winning the bowl game and ending the season 8-5 would just be I think, tremendous, especially as a first year as a Power 5 school. I think that says a lot. All right, so let's get to our picks then for this week. So starting with Big 12 play, we've got Kansas State and Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I think this is one of our easier picks. I don't see Oklahoma State mounting a defense on any of the Big 12 teams. especially now that they played Iowa State. So until Oklahoma State proves differently, I think you got to pick against them every week until they can figure out something that's happening there. So I got Kansas State in this one.
I know Kansas State lost to Mizzou. That was a tight one, and the game with UCF got pretty close. But I think UCF is a pretty good team. I still think Kansas State could slip in there, possibly past maybe Oklahoma and get into the Big 12 championship game. I think they are going to be a tough out for anybody. So yeah, I agree. It's K-State on this one. Okay, the Red River Rivalry.
Oh man,
Shootout, I guess that you say. So, who you got?
I'm excited for this. I'm really excited for this. I've always loved this game, and I'll watch this game whether it's Big 12 or SEC. This is fun football. I hope it continues over the years. They've had some really fun games. Oklahoma comes in insanely motivated after last year, after just getting embarrassed last year, and so that's got to play into it a little bit. But Texas has the it factor this year. They just they have that edge of they're going to find a way to win, and Oklahoma has seemed more vulnerable at times than Texas has. You could say Texas played a half against Wyoming where they didn't look great, or spots here and there, but really I just can't think of how Texas has been vulnerable. Oklahoma has struggled at times, only 20 points at Cincinnati. They seem their offense is kind of hit and miss at times. They're either on point and they're just rolling, or they're really struggling. So I like Texas in this. It's going to be close, but I think Texas pulls it out by a touchdown or maybe 10 points by the end.
Yeah, I think this is one that'll be entertaining throughout. But what we've seen from Texas is even in those close games, they've kept it close. And then it's been the fourth quarter where they've really pulled away. And I think that's a sign that they're kind of on another level. I mean, think about how many times we've seen BYU hang in there. And then because of lack of depth or whatever, the fourth quarter things slip away. And so I think that kind of shows that they're a step above that. Even if you can come out there and throw punches with them and hang with them, they will break away. And I'm still dubious on Oklahoma. I think they're good. Until we see them, I mean, you look at their schedule, until we see them play someone real and really do some damage, they can clearly score points, but I want to see a little more before I'm a believer. And this week
it's a fair complaint. Who have they played? Right? I mean, don't get me wrong. They played a couple teams that are competitive. They played Cincinnati. They played Iowa State, but they didn't even play a P5 game until Cincinnati. Their whole preseason was G5, and so I don't know that Oklahoma has really played anybody to legitimize their record, their statistics. FPI loves Oklahoma, but based on what? Based on a ton of yards they get against smaller schools. I don't know. They could go and they could dump truck Texas, and maybe they are that good, but Texas ran over Alabama, right? They've ran over really good teams, and that's that. I feel the same way about Oklahoma. It's a feeling of who you're good, but have you really played against stiff competition?
Yeah. So until I see it, and this week will be the litmus test. We'll see. If they make believers out of us, but. Until then, I'm definitely going with Texas as well. So this looks like, at least on paper, should be also a very fun matchup. One that had me, I was really on the fence about this pick. What are you thinking?
Well, it's the quarterback situation that
Exactly.
throws everything into question. Can you get Jalen Daniels back? Is Plumlee coming back? I would have loved to see this matchup with two healthy starting quarterbacks, because what an amazing offensive showdown that would have been. It's hard to say either way. I'm going to lean Kansas in this because I've gone with UCF the last couple of weeks and they've let me down both times. So I'm hesitant to pick UCF again. But I would have just loved to see these teams healthy play each other. I hope those quarterbacks get back to full strength. But either way, I'm gonna lean slightly towards Kansas.
Yeah, it's those back spasms couldn't have come back a week early. No, I'm kidding. I don't want to see anybody injured or not doing well, and you want to win because you're the better team, not because of key injuries. But really,
right.
I think BYU wins that game if Daniels doesn't play. I mean, if you think about it, it was those QB runs that just
Oh yeah.
him being able to escape the pocket that just killed us. So yeah, I'm with you. I think this should be a fun game, and I wouldn't be shocked if UCF wins. But my money, especially being in Lawrence, it's still on Kansas. So um, next one we got TCU Iowa State. Maybe a
Yeah.
less compelling matchup.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of confidence in Iowa State. Um, I actually didn't want TCU to lose to West Virginia because I want them to sleep on the BYU game a little bit because I feel like TCU's athletically superior. They've got more experience going to the playoff last year. That's a tough game for us. I'd rather we come in there and surprise them. But boy, having lost their second game, I feel like this team is better than that. I feel like they're better than the team that lost to West Virginia. Even though now I have a ton of respect for West Virginia, that's a legit team. I feel like TCU should be a little bit more. Um, and so we kind of referenced early in the season that Colorado lost and that giving TCU a head of steam into some of these matchups. I think that applies here again at Iowa State. And I just haven't seen enough. Iowa State defense just melted against Oklahoma last week. Um, and I don't know that Iowa State has a strong enough identity in the second half of the season to win some of these games. So I've got TCU.
Yeah, I agree. We Iowa State's, I guess, best chance at winning this game is their defense, but I don't see them being able to lock up TCU, especially after, like you said, what OU did to them last week. And I am a believer, I think, in this TCU team. Obviously, they had a couple shocking, although as time goes on, not so bad losses. Colorado and West
Mm-hmm.
Virginia in close games are both respectable losses. So
Yeah.
I still think TCU is going to be a force in the conference. And Iowa State has a lot to figure out. I think they'll be able to go in there and keep it competitive for a little bit, but I think TCU comes out of this one.
Yeah.
Okay. Another this feels like a must-have because these are two teams that coming off of emotional surprise wins and and very timely wins that they really needed to stop the bleeding. And now one of them is going to be able to keep that momentum rolling and really hopefully put their season on a different trajectory. And who do you think is going to pull it out? Who is
Uh,
going to keep ascending, and who's going to go back into a tailspin?
Yeah, of the matchups between two teams with a losing record, I can't wait for this one.
Yeah.
Just because of what you said, two fan bases that I have tons of respect for. I like these brands. I like the way they play football, and both coming off offensive explosions that could rewrite their seasons. So I'm excited to watch this. I like Baylor at home because I like Grimes and Aranda. Um, it's their coaching staff and it's the way they did it. Being down by that much and coming back says so much. And I know Texas Tech played from behind as well and just you know really put on an offensive show. They both have such similar storylines, but Baylor being at home, um, and this is me putting a little bit more trust in that coaching staff that I like so much. I'm going to go with Baylor.
Yeah, I mean, you make great points. This is one that I really struggled with and went back and forth on, but I'm actually taking Tech on this one. I think having Shuck makes a difference, and I don't know. I had them. They're in similar places now, and I had Texas Tech higher, prior to this season. So I think out of the two teams, that they're both putting it together, they're both kind of in that same stage. And again, I think that Texas Tech's losses have, by and large, been better losses than
Mm,
Baylor's. That I mean, you look at Utah. I mean, yes, an excellent defense, locked down, but they weren't able to get anything going there. They lose to shoot. Let me scroll down because now there were so many of them. But yeah, the Texas State, that one was not bad. Whereas you look at Wyoming and they Texas Tech hung in there with
yeah,
Oregon. West Virginia is not such a bad loss.
yeah, yeah.
So
That's a good point. That's a good
I
point.
think yes, it's a home game for Baylor, but I think that Tech is going to be able to come in there and just outplay them. Unfortunately, I think this is just not Baylor's season.
Mm, you're convincing me. I'm
No,
sticking
too
with my
late. You're
pick.
locking it in.
I'm sticking with my pick, but Now I'm going to regret it. That's a good argument.
I hope so. Okay, so oh, this is another tough one. So now we're out of conference play. Who do you have in this top 25 matchup?
I, I wish I knew more about Mizzou. I know they beat K-State, and I know they've had some quality wins, and they look the part, right? They look the part. How can you not when you're undefeated and they're going against a two-loss LSU team? Um, and but I just can't walk away from Chip Kelly and the Tigers yet. Maybe I should. I've been bit twice by them when I picked them, but I'm gonna go with LSU again, even though it's at Mizzou. I'm not ready to say LSU is a 3-3 team.
Yeah, right now, actually, uh, no pun intended, but I feel like both of these teams are kind of paper tigers, and so I just feel like, yeah, LSU's given us lots of reasons not that we can't really trust in them, but Missouri hasn't done a whole lot. It was a close game against Kansas State, and they pulled out a squeaker. Memphis is not a bad team, but other than that, I mean, I just don't know if there's enough there.
Yeah,
Whereas I think we have a better sense of who LSU is, and we know they can at least compete with these teams at that level. And I think if it comes to it, I trust the coaching there, and probably from top to bottom more talent at LSU. So I agree. I think that's the safe pick. But all right, now we have. Oh, I'm on my other screen. Here we go. So Maryland at Ohio State, and I did not want to select this game because I don't want to have to pick Ohio State. But this was a matchup at noon, so I thought it was only fair that it's Fox at noon. We had to pick this one. So who are you taking?
well, so for the record, I don't think Ohio State is a top five team. I don't. That being said, I don't think Maryland's the team to beat them.
Right.
Um, but I think somebody's going to get them this year because I don't think Ohio State is quite as strong um, as they seem right now. I think they're living on brand, but there's a sense there that they're just not quite what they used to be. Now that proved me wrong when they beat Notre Dame on the last play of the game at Notre Dame. I mean, what an incredible victory! Notre Dame's an amazing team. And so maybe I shouldn't be down on the Buckeyes. But even with that, I'm going to go with the Buckeyes here. I am going to pick against them later this season against some teams. I could see Penn State, definitely Michigan, but not Maryland. I don't think Maryland will get it done.
Yeah, I mean Maryland has looked impressive on paper, but you look at who they've played, and so this is just a completely different matchup. And I completely agree. Ohio State is probably not a top five team, which is why these early season rankings are so dumb. It's one win equals a move up. Instead of just throwing
Yep.
it all away and coming in from scratch each week, it's just the weird kind of moving up, moving down formula. But anyway. So they're up there, but I think that, yeah, you're right. They will come down to earth at some point, but I don't know if Maryland's the one to do it. If they do it, great. I'll be rooting for them. But okay, another interesting matchup in the
Yeah.
SEC West. So, I mean, are you going with Nick Saban, or do you think that A&M has enough juice this year when Bama's down a little bit to finally pull one off? Not finally, but pull another one off.
So I've picked against Saban twice this year. Um, was right once, was wrong once. Um, and I don't know that Texas A&M is back, but I like them at home. I think they've overcome some adversity. They have been necessarily humbled over the past couple seasons. Um, and the showing on the road against South Florida tells me that Alabama team struggles on the road, particularly their offense. And I think A&M has enough offense to get past this game. So I'm picking A&M in the upset. I like them at home. Um, and apparently I'm all about picking against Saban this year, which is never a wise bet, but I'm jumping in again.
I almost had the guts to do it, and I was too scared to pick against Saban. And I picked with him once, and I picked against him another time. And this definitely compared to Nick Saban Alabama team, a flawed team. But I think that USF game was kind of a wake up moment, and I don't know. Jimbo Fisher is another one that I just have mixed feelings on. They always have all the talent in the world and can't get it done. So I don't know. I could definitely see A&M winning this one, but I am going to stick with Saban. And
All
if
right.
I lose on picking with Saban, that's something I can live with. So all right, Kentucky and Georgia. So moving to the East. So Kentucky is 5-0. Another one of those basketball, traditionally basketball programs that's had a hot start. And they looked really good last week, beating a Florida that gave it to Tennessee.
Yeah.
So lost to Utah. So and as we mentioned, Georgia looks vulnerable this year. Is Kentucky the team that could possibly knock them off?
So I don't know if Georgia's playing with their food because they're bored, or if they've really lost a step this year. And history says it is really, really tough to three-peat. It's tough to win a championship in a year, but to three-peat is so difficult. And so I think there's some credence to the narrative that Georgia has lost a step this year. Um, and I think we're going to know whether or not in this game because they're going to take Kentucky seriously. They are, and Kentucky runs the ball really well. Um, and so I know last week I said I'm gonna pick Georgia until they lose because they haven't lost in a million games. But I am gonna eat my words and reverse that, and I'm gonna go with Kentucky because I love chaos and I love chaos in the SEC, and this would be awesome chaos. And so I'm gonna go with Kentucky on the road. Georgia's been vulnerable the last couple games. They've just sort of been dinking around a little bit, and I think it's gonna come back and bite them, and Kentucky's gonna win a thriller.
I hope you're right, but I'm still going with Georgia on this one. I'm being chicken. I went with Bama, and I'm going with Georgia. I love that you're picking. I'm actually going to be rooting with your picks this week, but I'm making the
These are picks with my heart, not my head.
and I want to see some chaos too. That's what college football is all about, is
Yeah.
coming and seeing some of those upsets. Could we see another one with Notre Dame at Louisville?
So Louisville, what a surprise! I never had them picked for being where they're at this point in the season. And props to them for what they've accomplished. This is on the road. Notre Dame has tough game after tough game. The reason I'm picking Notre Dame on the road is because they have been battle tested. That game against Ohio State came down to the last second. Their game against Duke came down to the end. They have had to win in some tough environments. I think Duke was a tougher game than what Louisville will be, and Notre Dame proved they can get it done there. I think they'll get it done at Louisville.
Yeah, I agree with you. I want to pick Louisville, but I I don't know. Again, it's with these teams, struggling at NC State. I mean, they grinded out a win, and they've otherwise looked fairly impressive. But yeah, I think Notre Dame, even though that's another team I'm not sure I completely believe in. I think they're ranked higher than they probably deserve. What are 10 this week? I still think that they get it done for now. I think eventually. I don't think they run the table this season. Okay, finally, we have not done a group of 5 matchup yet, but with Fresno State breaking into the top 25 and Wyoming having quite the season so far, I thought it only fitting. What do you make of this Mountain West matchup?
Yeah, boy, I have experienced so many nightmares as a BYU fan in Laramie. Um, I I have respect for that place, and I hope we never play there again, because it feels like we go up there with dominant teams and just couldn't get things going. It's like playing on the frozen tundra at Lambeau Field, and I know it's not frozen yet. The worst games in Laramie are in November, but I just like this Wyoming team because of their scrappiness. Uh, I know they lost at Texas, but they had to walk away from there feeling pretty good about themselves. This is a very, very good team, and it's at Wyoming. If it was at Fresno State, I'd feel differently. I like the home field advantage to Wyoming, and they have proven themselves. Speaking of being battle tested, they have proven themselves that that is a legitimate football team in Laramie this year. So I'm going to go with the Cowpokes.
Yeah, and this is another one. This is what I was talking about. I'm also going with Wyoming for all the reasons you laid out. I was hoping with Fresno State that you'd go with that one. We'd have another break here, but
I've
uh,
given you a couple good picks already this week.
yeah,
A
that's right.
couple low percentages.
They did, and I just clicked away from it, but they did beat Nevada by a bigger, wider margin than Kansas did. So I mean that's something for Fresno. But I mean, you look at this Wyoming. This is what I was talking about with Texas. You know, a lot of teams can hang in there and keep it close. Look at it tied going into the fourth, and then
Hmm.
that's when they break away. And I mean, Texas, as we've talked about, is on a different level. So I think Wyoming will be able to hang with them. I mean, this one loss is not, you know, nothing to hang your head on or about. So I think Wyoming can do it. So and I put another one in here. We're both in Virginia. Both did grad school at William and Mary. So this is a fun one. While I actually attended a game with my dad and my brother at Virginia, um, William and Mary playing at Virginia. We were wearing William and Mary gear, but Bronco was coaching, and we were sitting in. We got my dad knew someone from church, from the coaching staff, so we're sitting in like the Virginia, like with all the families and stuff, wearing our
In your William
William
and
and Mary
Mary
stuff,
gear.
but we were rooting for Virginia because we wanted to see Bronco do well. But now that Bronco's gone, I feel no more allegiance to UVA than I do any other school in Virginia outside of William and Mary. So they're obviously not doing very well right now, but they are a Power Five team here. William and Mary went to, I think, the semifinal for the FCS last year and are off to a pretty good start this year. Do you think that they can go in there and steal one from UVA?
Well, I'm looking at the intrigue here in the extra. Oh, look at that representing. I'm looking at there's some added intrigue to this because Mike London is the head
Yes.
coach at William and Mary, and he's going back to UVA where he coached last time at the P5 level. So there's some added incentive there to come away with a win, and Virginia unfortunately is out of sorts. They're having a really hard time figuring it out this year. And Mike Lennon has that team playing. I remember watching them in his second season. He just had some really innovative concepts on offense. It was fun to watch. It was creative. So I'd love to catch this game on Saturday. It will be a fun one, just because of that element to it. And I'm gonna pick the tribe here, and I'm going for William and Mary in the upset.
Yeah, totally with you. Yeah, it's a shame I didn't think ahead and to try to attend this game, but this is going to be a good one. But I think they pull it out, and I don't feel great for UVA. I'd still like to see them. Any school in Virginia do well. It's sad to see them in this tailspin, but it's great for William and Mary. You feel like they have to, with the way that the rivalry's been over the years. On a year when UVA's down this much, and you've got a team with some juice like they have this year, you got to take advantage of that and get a win over your rival. So
Yeah.
hopefully they pull it out. So for the record, so there's a chance for me to pick up 3 wins this week. We got Baylor and Texas Tech. We have Bama at A&M, and then Kentucky at Georgia. So those will be the games for us to watch and keep an eye on.
All
Outside of
right.
that, but yeah, tons of good matchups. I love getting into this part of the season. It's when we really start seeing some separation between the top teams, and we start learning whoever a lot about teams and who's really going to step up and be a contender. So
Yeah.
really excited, and it's kind of nice because it can be stress free.
That's right. On the bye week, coming off a win,
Right.
man, it's I love that kind of bye week. That's good. That's good stuff.
And it's not in November after playing, Idaho
11
State
straight
or
games.
UMass or something. It's or Wagner. we're
Yep.
actually in the middle of the season where it's going to do us some good, allow our team to rest up and hopefully
Yeah,
be
yeah,
going.
and we're in the middle of the conference fight right now, and have a lot of opportunity ahead of us. It's fun. Love being back in conference play, and more so in the Big 12. This is a conference I followed for years just because of their brand, their style of offense. It's always been so much fun, the parity in the conference, and so to be a part of it, man, it's awesome. I'm loving this.
Yes, it's so much fun, and I'm not projecting or even saying that BYU is going to compete for the Big 12 championship, but it's so fun to be able to be invested in those conference rankings and see how different teams, how it plays out, and where we fall, and how it gives you a little extra incentive to root for certain teams because it'll help you in the in the rankings within the
Hmm.
conference and move up, and it's just fun, something we've missed in independence. So
Yeah.
all right, Adam. Well, we've gone a little long, even with BYU not playing this week, uh, but it's an exciting week to look forward to. So, all right. Well, thanks for joining me again. And as always, go Cougs and
Go
Tribal.
Cougs.